Hello, beautiful soul family. Rebecca here, your Vibe Mentor. And this channel is for conscious, purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are looking to remove the blocks that hold them back from their purpose so that we can manifest abundance through it. Beautiful to have you here. I'm so excited to discuss today's topic with you. The topic of self-concept has been very much in the forefront for me recently. And self-image or self-concept are very similar. The term self-concept comes about more so as you think about the topic of manifestation. Now, you've heard people say that you visualize something, if you want to manifest it, you have to visualize it and feel as though it is already done. There's also recommendations around living as if, or becoming the person who would manifest or live the life that you desire to live. And so all of this is tied into your self-concept. How you visualize something, how you manifest something is all dependent on how you see yourself. So if you follow me, you know I recap some things that are important, that it's really critical for us to not only know at the prefrontal cortex level, but to also embody and know at a core cellular level. And one of those is our beliefs create our reality. And this ties very directly into our self-concept. If you believe yourself to be competent and confident and capable and strategic and intelligent and able to do anything you put your mind to, that is feeding into your self-concept or your self-image. Now, if you see yourself as unworthy or unvaluable or broken, or there's something wrong with you, you're an outcast, you don't belong, you trigger people, all of these beliefs can lead to thoughts and actions and behaviors that would keep you from being a conscious manifester. So as a conscious, purpose-driven entrepreneur, we really want to get critically understanding of, we want to get intimate with the understanding of our self-concept. Also, if you follow this channel, you know that complex trauma or conditioning or programming, anything that is operating in our subconscious can be very difficult to see. It sort of hangs out in our blind spot, again, in the subconscious. If you've ever felt like you are attempting to start a business, you're attempting to step into your purpose, you want to be your own boss or to manifest your dream life, to live your best life, you know how to do it from a prefrontal cortex level, but you can't quite seem to make it happen. You run into things like self-sabotage or overwhelm or shutdown, or you just find yourself being unable to find the motivation to move through whatever it is that seems to keep you separate from your purpose, your mission, your business, being a successful entrepreneur. So it typically is the self-concept or the subconscious beliefs hiding out in your blind spot around who you are, the value and worth that you have to offer, or how you will be received in the world. Likely you are dealing with some form of complex trauma, which usually comes from not feeling safe, seen, heard, cared for, loved as a child, which can either lead to a lack of motivation, a lack of desire, a lack of willingness to put yourself out there, to be seen, for fear of judgment, rejection, criticism, ridicule, essentially pain. Or on the flip side, it will also cause an excessive need for accomplishment, for perfectionism, for overachieving, and you'll find yourself in burnout and shutdown and things of that nature. So we need to find the middle way. We cannot be too undermotivated, that we're not willing to go into the shadows and do the healing work that is necessary, or we cannot also be so perfectionist and so over motivated that we burn out and shut down. We have to be able to find that middle ground. And if you follow me, you know I'm all about somatic healing, that complex trauma, programming and conditioning, all of these subconscious challenges that we have to overcome are housed in the body. They live in the body. There, of course, is a connection from the limbic brain. The limbic brain is kind of where your programs, I like to think of like a little floppy disk that's inserted in there. It's your programs that tell you when it's safe to step out, when it's safe to put yourself out there, to ask for what you're worth, things of that nature. But there's a direct connection to the body. The body keeps the score. And so all of this is also housed in the body, which is why somatic work is necessary to be able to remove those blocks. So I usually preface these conversations with healing first. We must do the somatic work to be able to create a sustainable foundation. Now, plenty of people have been able to push through these barriers, push through these blocks, and force themselves to put themselves out there, to do the things they know they should do. And still yet, you'll notice that there are plenty of wealthy, successful entrepreneurs who are unhappy because they have not healed these limiting beliefs around who they are or the world they live in. And it directly is related to that self-concept. So another important point to note is that when we have traumas in the body, we have conditioning or programming or limiting beliefs, the lack mentality, it is in the body, and there is energy that it has to go to managing and maintaining these blocks, these beliefs. It's kind of like walking around with glass shards in your body and having to gingerly navigate the world to make sure that you're not triggered. Imagine how much energy goes to moving about the world without being triggered. Now imagine something like brain spotting, which is what I do. We use this pointer to find the access point through the eyes to access the limbic brain and remove these traumas, recondition and program the subconscious. Imagine once all of these glass shards, if you will, are released from your body, removed from your body, how much energy is freed up. The things that you have to push yourself to do then become easy. It's so much easier to get the momentum going. Not to mention your traumas also bury your gifts, your innate talents. And so who you are and who you're meant to be will start to flourish and shine. And you'll find that you have talents and gifts that you never knew existed before. Essentially, you become realigned to your original design instead of the design of the world. You are able to remove the beliefs and the programming, and instead of being who your parents designed you to be or who the world wanted you to be, you become who you were meant to be. And your talents are your key to being unique, to having a differentiator in the world. You cannot be a successful entrepreneur if you are a dime a dozen. You cannot be effective out in the world if you are copying someone else. It is your unique signature, your unique fingerprint that is going to set you apart from the others and make you someone in demand, where people are going to say, I need to work with this person, right? That you are extremely valuable. You are a gem. You are a diamond in the rough. And it is a privilege and a pleasure to be in your energy, to work with you. And until you see that about yourself, others will not see that. So again, we need to bring it back to the self-concept. So once we've done this healing work, we've relieved the blocks, the limits, we've removed the restrictions and the box around us. We've relieved all of this energy. We start to see who we are naturally, who we were made to be. We realign with our original design. You will find that it is necessary to redefine your self-concept. Now, this is where I get to exercise my healing muscles and my ability to express and show you who I am, and practice this vulnerability and authenticity that is necessary, and remind you that I have been on this path. Everything I teach on this channel is something that I have experienced. And I also have studied incessantly psychology, neurobiology, biohacking, all of the things necessary to get this entire being to come online so that we can truly achieve our highest potential. And so when I look back at my history of my self-concept, it starts as early as I can remember at 3 years old, where I was alone. I was outside alone at 3 years old. And I remember thinking, I'm too young to be alone. I shouldn't be alone right now. And in fact, this memory is so clear to me. I remember wearing a Miss Piggy swimming suit that my grandfather had given me, and he was my most adoring fan. And he knew that I loved Miss Piggy because no one liked Miss Piggy. So I was going to like Miss Piggy. She was a strong woman. She knew what she wanted. And I just remember feeling like I'm alone. I shouldn't be alone. And being alone was a very dominant theme throughout my entire childhood. And that message that was received was that there's something wrong with me, which is usually how we as children interpret not feeling safe, seen, heard, cared for, or loved. Right. So ultimately, from a psychological perspective, you could say that that was emotional neglect, to be left alone, to be so isolated. Even in my older years, my father was a minister, and he believed in giving everything away. And we lived in a house next to the church. And we literally had as much of a sidewalk in between our house and the church. And we would go from the house to the church to the house to the church. And that was my life. There was no secular music. There were no friends outside of the church. The church was very small. I went to school in the church. I was lucky if there was ever one child my age. And so the isolation theme continued. And of course, as an adult, especially a psychologically aware adult, I can look back and see that it's obviously not the child's fault, but the message received from the subconscious brain is that there's a problem with me. And so the brain's job, being to keep us safe, will look at these different scenarios and say, I have to keep myself safe. So I have to figure out what the problem is. Why does this keep happening? Well, I can't control all of these adults, and I can't fix the fact that we're isolated. So the only thing I can do, and hopefully you're able to you put yourself in your own story here when you're a child and you're looking back, and even if it was not technically neglect, even if it was perceived pain, perceived trauma, this still applies, because the child's interpretation is what really matters. It doesn't matter what should have been. We don't should all over ourselves. So we look back and we say, I had no control. The only thing I can control is myself. Therefore, I must be the problem. Who I am is a problem, and what I need is a problem. And so then that becomes the dominant theme, not just in that era, but we carry that all throughout the rest of our childhood or our adulthood. So my self-concept was there must be something wrong with me. And then, of course, you'll start to notice that because we have adopted, we're experiencing trauma, we're in a trauma response, we're in fight or flight, we're in hypervigilance. The brain is constantly trying to fix this problem. So we become hypersensitive, we become hyper aware, we become hyper attuned, we become overachievers, we become underachievers, we shut down, we fight, we fawn, we freeze, we fly when we can. We are living in this constant state of trying to solve the problem and also cope with the pain of not being able to. So then, in my experience, I became desperate for connection. I became over exuberant. I became so excited when there was other people to engage with. And of course, by that time I was a teenager and things were starting to shift and change. There were more people in my life, but I became over assertive, over excitable, over exuberant, right? And so then the feedback from my peers was, you're too much. You're too naive, you're too hyper, you're too excitable, you're too. Now, again, I would ask you, look back at your experience. How many times did people tell you you were too something? And what was the response to that? Shut down, right? We stopped doing the thing they claim that we are too much of. So then very quickly, I should say, really the too much phase was probably 10 to 12, 10 to 14. And then from there in the teenage years, I started to realize, Kurt Cobain was big at that time, although he was passing right in those teenage years for me. And, melancholy was cool, and being dismissive was cool. And I don't care, right? I went from being very optimistic, very bubbly, very happy, very exuberant to melancholy, shut down, even depressed, right? And so it became something that I saw as more acceptable in my peers, and yet also it just happened to coincide with the fact that I really was becoming depressed because this life was too difficult to figure out, right? And so you can see how the self-concept continues to change in the way that life reflects back to us who we are, which really ultimately stems from the conditioning or the programming of the environment. And so it's really important to see that that is not your natural state. That was not who I was naturally. If I didn't have a narcissistic, abusive father, if I didn't have an emotionally unavailable mother, and even in my teen years, if I didn't have a physically abusive stepfather, I would have been a very different person. Now, here's the good news. That self-concept ended up manifesting a lot of pain and heartache, more difficult relationships, 2 more very unhealthy, toxic, narcissistic relationships in my own life as far as romantic partners, not to mention the multiple in my childhood as fathers and stepfathers. Good news, I started to say. The good news is once we start to see that the self-concept that we have held till this point has not served us and has stemmed from other people, external environments, external situations and factors, we can take back the reins of our life and say no more. That is not who I was designed to be. Had I been nurtured, this is the person I would have been. I have always been actually a very classy person. I've always been a very intelligent person. I've always been a very generous and caring and giving person. I've always been very, very open and honest about who I am, sort of wearing my truth on my sleeve, right? So I don't want to keep talking about myself, but this is more so an example of looking back at who you were before the world changed you, and also recognizing that we are a disassembled Lego kit that we get to assemble. We get to decide how we put the pieces of this puzzle together. So I love I think it was Descartes that said, "I think, therefore I am." And this has been confused as in it, I guess I won't assume. Some people I have talked to have interpreted, oh my gosh, words today, interpreted this to mean that because I have thinking activity, therefore I get to say I am here, I exist. But I interpret this in a different way. And if you really dig in deep into the intention of the original statement, it was really about questioning whether or not something was true. And it became sort of a benchmark. And I believe the statement, the way I perceive it, means more so what I think I am becomes how I exist to be, right? I think, therefore I am. What I think I am is what I become, essentially. And so this whole video here is really to bring awareness to your self-concept. Really start to dig deep into, how do you see yourself? How have you historically seen yourself? How did that evolve over time? What external factors shaped and shifted your perception of yourself? And what was justified, what was reasonable, and what wasn't? What was theirs and what was not yours? And so any of us who have experienced that situation, and I would say that I kind of shy away from the term complex trauma because the big T word, people are like, oh, I don't have trauma. My childhood was fine. It's really the human condition. It's not, that some of us have complex trauma and others of us don't. If you look at COVID-19, a vast majority of the world felt unsafe for an extended period of time. And that becomes a program, a condition that remains in our subconscious brain that says, are we sure it's safe? And that creates that hypervigilance and the whole 9 yards. So if you want to know more about complex trauma, search my channel. I've got tons of videos on that. But I more so bring that up so that you understand that this is not just a few people who've experienced trauma in their life. This really is understanding the brain, the body, how it works, and how to work through those blocks, those things that hold us back from creating the life that we dream of, the business that we dream of, the freedom, the purpose, the fulfillment, the peace, the joy, the happiness, all of it comes from understanding how this works, because this can happen at any point in your life. It doesn't have to be in childhood. And it truly is the difference between being able to move forward freely with all of your energy and momentum moving in the direction of your choosing, versus being sort of that scattered light bulb and having your energy to going to these other things that need to be managed because you somehow feel like you are not enough, others are not enough, or there's not enough in the world. Okay, so tips for understanding how to change your self-concept. So like I said, start with understanding of where you're at now. How do you see yourself now? Where did that come from? How has it changed historically over time? And really kind of go through the timeline, walk back to your earliest memory and understand, how did I see myself then? What came up at that time? How did it change how I saw myself? And then how did I adapt or cope? What changes in myself did I make to shift and change how I showed up in the world to try to be more acceptable or more loved, right? So understand, take inventory of where you're at now. Then also step 2 would be to understand where you want to go. Where do you want, how do you want to see yourself? Who do you want to become? Now, I have to pull out my journal because I just went through this exercise, and it's more than just writing down, I want to be like Tony Robbins, or I want to be like Oprah, right? There's more to it than that. It is beyond just the clothes you wear or the things you say or the label that you are given. It's as much about the feelings. So I would understand all of your I am statements. How do you define yourself? I am intelligent. I am smart. I am wise. I am capable. I am a good mother. I am a good partner. I am clean. I am healthy. I am fit. I am lean. I am strong. Go through all of the I am statements, because that is partially going to define how you see yourself now, as well as the declaration of what you are becoming. And then I would also look at sort of the tone of how you want to show up. I am classy. I am also a bit artistic. I am soft. I am nurturing. I am loving. I am authentic, right? Those to me are more than just the I am statements. They are the tone or the quality of the feeling of how I show up. And then I would also look at really bridging the gap to the future in how you want to be seen. I want to be respected for being an academic and being professional. I want to be respected for being a successful business owner. I want to be respected for changing the education system and helping people become aware of the mind-body connection and how to work with things like complex trauma, right? So those are different aspects of how to look at the tone and the quality of who you want to become, right? So step 1 was inventory of who you have been. Step 2 is who you want to become, or even considering add into step 2 who you were before the world changed you. Because I know for me that I have some strong senses of who I was before other factors came in and made me feel like that was a problem, right? Then look at what needs to change, right? Number 3 is what needs to change. I like to compare the list of how I have historically seen myself compared to how I want to or how I currently do see myself. And then the third column is what needs to change to make those things happen. Number 4 is role models. Now, I as you can tell, I kind of hesitate when I say that, because there are not a lot of people like me who are out there, right? That this bridging of the spiritual aspect or the energetic aspect, the conscious, heart-centered person who's aware of energy and manifestation and quantum physics, versus the professional business entrepreneurial aspect of me, right? And so really bringing those together requires a few different role models that I'm sort of mixing and matching, that there's not one person out there. And of course, that's going to be difficult to find one person who's just like you, because you are unique and you have a very perfectly made imprint that is specific to you, because only you can do what you came here to do, and the world needs the gift that only you have to offer, and you are perfectly imperfect for your purpose. So role models as best you can. How about that? Number 5 is visualization. I have recently been talking about how visualization to me seems more of a passive activity versus visioning or architecting is more of an active visualization. And so do check out the video, whether or not it comes out before or after this, on architecting your life, because there is some really intricate nuances to what it means to align to your unique design and to understand the energetics in the body, and how to take your power, how to own your power, and know that as you architect these things in your mind, as you visualize or visioning or architecting them in your mind, you are creating the blueprint for your future. There's so much that goes into that. So you definitely have to check out that video. This one's already getting long, so I don't want to go into too much detail. Number 6 is really get critical on your thoughts. Really, really, really get intimate with every single thought, and know that you have 80 to 90,000 thoughts a day, and 70% of them are repeated. So that means that there's a lot of thoughts that are happening without your awareness. And really, when I look back on my inventory of who my self-concept up until this point, there are a lot of thoughts that I had about myself at the time that I wasn't aware of, that I only see now. So what that tells us is there's a lot happening in the subconscious, in the rearview mirror, right? In the blind spot where we need the other, we need that compassionate witness. We need the mirror of someone else to help us see the patterns and the programming that needs somatic therapy to heal from. Okay. And number 7 is choose to architect your energy wisely. If you are telling yourself, I'm not enough, I can't do this, I'm broken, I'm flawed, I can't learn, I don't know how, this is too hard, all of these thoughts are creating an energetic environment that is not going to support you. Now, that's proven at a psychological level, at a biological level, that your mind will create stress hormones based on negative thoughts, which are coming from limiting beliefs, or your brain will create positive hormones, which will create a positive, uplifting, inspiring, energizing environment. And you won't be able to, I won't say you won't, because plenty of people have pushed through negative states, but it will be much harder for you to be successful if you are not consciously architecting your own energy from a mental standpoint, as well as creating your future in a visualization through a future blueprint, if you will. Okay. So those are my 7 steps for helping you shift and change your self-concept. Know that everything you create comes from who you believe yourself to be. When people say you must live as if, this is what they're talking about. You have to have the self-concept that supports what you are trying to create and manifest in your life. And if you are going to be a successful, conscious, purpose-driven entrepreneur and help us create heaven on earth, it is very necessary to have a positive self-concept, and that will again help excel everything that you are designing and desiring. All right. That feels complete. I love you, my friends. I will see you in the next video. Namaste.